So good morning, everyone. Collaborate to protect. Welcome to this EU Cluster Talk on cybersecurity. I'm Chris Burns. I'm talking to you from the European Parliament here in Strasbourg, which is a place where there's a lot of talk also about cybersecurity. A lot of people are worried about that for governments, for businesses, for people. How do we keep from getting hacked? And if we do get hacked, what do we do about it? In fact, we're doing this cluster talk this time at the request of a lot of clusters. You asked for it. And we have over 200 ICT clusters in this constellation of the cluster collaboration platform, the ECCP. We're 1,500 organizations, 200 of them ICT clusters, and that's why we're talking about this. Especially for SMEs, how can we protect you? How do we do this? So we want to talk about that with the Commission, with our guests, and with you. We want to get your questions in. What's the agenda? So we'll start with the news on the collaboration activities. We're going to talk with the European Commission on the cybersecurity policies. We've got speakers from all different kinds of companies across the European Union, and then we'll have funding opportunities. Let's talk about tech tips, or the housekeeping rules, as they call them. We'll have Slido questions for you to get you involved. So you scan the QR code to answer that, or you can type in slido.com. Also use the Zoom function to ask questions. You can hit the button at the bottom of the screen, either to ask a question directly, or to Q&A, or to chat. Watch that chat. There's a lot of great information being exchanged there. And then this is being recorded for playback for you. And also any of the slides that you see will also be on the platform to look at later, because there's a lot of slides that you'll be seeing that are full of information. They're quite dense sometimes. All right. I think with that, let's get started with the news from Nina Hauptmann, team member of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Nina, please.
Chris, and good morning to everybody. Welcome to this cluster talk, and happy to be with you this morning. One important news already to share right at the beginning. There's public consultation open for reporting requirements for businesses and member states to reduce the administrative burden. And this is a public consultation launched by the European Commission to get feedback, ideas, and inputs from you, from EU businesses, as well as from member states, on the reporting requirements that are set out and originate in the EU legislation, and which can be considered burdensome, either in terms of time, in terms of costs that are associated with that time, or in terms of difficulty in meeting requirements. And you can also submit suggestions for rationalization, modernization, optimization of these reporting requirements. This is just came out yesterday, and you can make your contribution until the end of November via the Have Your Say portal. You have the link in the chat, and we will also share the presentation of course afterwards, so you can click on the links to make your contribution and suggestions to this presentation. We also invite you to an online training session, Invest EU in Action. This is a training session organized by the Enterprise Europe Network in collaboration with DG GROW, DG ACFIN, EIF, and ISMEA to discuss the program Invest EU, to get an overview of the program and its facilities, as well as the SME window within the program, discuss the modalities, and of course the supporting and advisory service that the beneficiaries can get, as well as the sustainable finance and reporting finance. It will take place on the 27th of October at 9:30 online, and you can register via the link in the chat if you would like to attend. We are also looking into November, which is starting in 2 weeks, and there are a lot of things going on. For example, the European SME Week, celebration of entrepreneurship and innovation. The SME Week will take place in Bilbao from the 13th until the 17th of November, and it aims to create a business-friendly environment and boost SMEs' competitiveness discuss opportunities to get funding at different levels, EU, national, regional, local, and of course, to encourage more people to become entrepreneurs. And it will also host the SME Assembly and the Europe Enterprise Network Conference on the 15th and 17th of November. So if you're around in Bilbao, come to the SME Week. Or if at the same dates you are in Brussels, there's the Raw Materials Week, which will take place. That's organized by the European Commission, and it joins various stakeholders that are working on raw materials that would like to discuss the Critical Raw Materials Act, and of course also topics that are related to this. So I'm talking about strategic project, investments, permitting, exploration, innovation, circularity, and international partnerships. Plus, this week has also several satellite events that you might be interested in looking into. So have a look at the website and the registration for the raw materials week.
That's by the way, that's by the way a huge hot topic here in the Parliament on critical raw materials and how to secure them. So that's obviously being talked about a lot in Brussels.
Yeah, definitely, and sure there will be a lot going on during that. We will be with our Clusters Meet regions in Prague, Düsseldorf, Jiaszy, and Krakow. You see the dates on the screen, and the registration is open. So if you want to come to discuss the role of clusters in regional economies and how they can drive the green and digital transition and how to build resilience, discuss with the regional stakeholders from these countries, you're most invited to come to the Clusters Region events. And there's also matchmaking sessions that will take place here. So if you're looking for new partners, or the members are looking for new partners, this is the place to be. And last but not least, if you hear anything today that you would like to share and discuss, we also have the discussion groups available, a general discussion group, one on really focus on Ukraine. And also if you're looking for project collaboration, the so-called C2Lab community discussion group. Plus we have also the Europe clusters, which are the flagship initiatives, and from clusters at the moment launching many calls and support opportunities for SMEs. So join us online for the current for the discussion and to keep it going. And with that, let's dive into the topic of the day. And back to you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, getting your feedback from everybody is extremely important, and that's what these cluster collaboration talks are all about. Is not only giving you information, but we want to get your feedback. And before we do, let's talk to the European Commission about that. Boriana Hristova-Ilieva, legal officer, DG Connect. At the Commission, you've been there since 2019, pre-COVID. So you've seen, I mean, as far as in your capacity, so you've seen how things have evolved since then. Before that, you were a DG Comp in the IT section as a case handler also. So very much connected with IT. I might mention very quickly a Eurobarometer survey from last year. Over 1/4 of European SME victims of cybercrime in 2021, about 1/3 very concerned about the risk, hacking online, bank accounts, phishing, impersonation, identity theft, spyware, malware. So it is a big concern among a lot of SMEs. And in that context, let me hand it to you, Boriana.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the nice introduction. Indeed, we also have in our impact assessments replies and ENISA studies that say that 57% of SMEs might run out of business in the case of a serious cybersecurity incident. So wow. It is a big issue indeed. Yeah. So let me start with, you can go on the next slide, where we have an overview of the main cybersecurity legislation or what has been happening in the EU on cybersecurity. So it started more or less in 2016. Basically, 2013 was when the Commission made the first proposal for NIS1 directive. This was the first legislation on cybersecurity, a first horizontal legislation on cybersecurity, which was covering many sectors in the EU. And so-called NIS1 directive entered into force 2016. It already laid the foundations, the basis for cybersecurity in the EU by making member states create their national authorities, because you have some very mature member states, but some are lagging behind. So to have an overall higher cybersecurity, since everything is interconnected, we needed to have some legislation, some serious impact and rules for everyone. Member states had to create authorities which would deal with that, cybersecurity incident response teams, the so-called CSIRTs, national strategies. There were certain rules that certain very critical entities, critical service operators had to comply with. They had to have cybersecurity measures and report incidents. And then the different authorities were meeting and exchanging best practices and policies in the so-called cooperation group and CSIRT network. So there was a European exchange forum framework. However, with you mentioned COVID. Indeed, COVID was a huge catalyst for digitalization. Then we had the war in Ukraine. So there has been a lot of additional risk factors coming in. So what we had as a framework was obviously not sufficient. So since then, you can see how intense the later stages have become. Called NAS2, which is already in place since January this year. And I'm going to present this and the Cyber Resilience Act, which are the two main pieces of legislation. There was the Cybersecurity Act in 2019, which introduced, so it made ENISA permanent, it gave it a permanent mandate. The Cybersecurity Agency introduced cybersecurity certification schemes. Then the Cybersecurity Competence Center and Network was also enforced since 2021. Now recently, in April this year, there was the latest proposal of the so-called Cyber Solidarity Act, which has the aim to build kind of a European cyber shield of SOCs, security operations centers, to have a cyber emergency mechanism, so-called cyber security reserve of trusted providers in case something happens, which could react and help. And then also an incident review mechanism in case of large-scale incidents.
Boriana,
and then,
Boriana, the DORA, which is the Digital Operational Resilience Act, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
You say it's proposed. Is that not approved yet?
It is. It entered into force together. You can see it under NIS2 directive entry into force. We have a SARE directive and DORA regulation, which all entered into force, entered into force on the next day. So NIS2, the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, and the DORA for the financial sector regulation, since they were very much interlinked, they were in a way negotiated in parallel and they were adopted in parallel. So they entered into force together, and they have been basically negotiated to ensure coherence between the three acts. And then the last part from this chart, which is, I mean, I can talk for hours about it, is the Skills Academy, Cybersecurity Skills Academy, which is not legislation, it's a communication. So it's an umbrella initiative where, because skills, it's a member state competence, but what the Commission can do is take the initiative and promote it and pull together existing resources and motivate all stakeholders to work together, because there is currently a huge skills gap between 2060 and 500,000 skilled professionals are lacking currently. And imagine, with all this new legislation and all these new measures, which are all necessary, which would need to enter into force, we will need skilled people both on the side of industry, of companies, but also on the side of member state authorities to be able to help these companies and also supervise them. So this Skills Academy aims to pull together demand, supply, and have companies also pledge that they would also train their professionals and facilitate people who want to get trained, have them find more easily training opportunities. So this is the latest piece of the puzzle. I will, on the next slide now, I can go a bit more into the NIS2, which is, as I said, it has these three main pillars. So the member states capabilities, so national authorities, crisis management frameworks is new. So this is what NIS2 brings on top of NIS1. Coordinated vulnerability disclosure frameworks is also a new element which exists in some member states, but the idea is to have it across the whole EU. And then there is the cooperation exchange on a European level. And then the core of the directive, what was mostly updated and revised, is the way the scope is designed, because before the scope was in a way designed by the member states. So this is changing now, and now we have a clear size threshold. So for the current audience, it is a mixed interest because we have medium or larger companies. So only, like as a rule, medium or larger, which would be in scope. But I will come to that. There are certain exceptions in certain sectors. We have all companies that are in particular sector. Then there are a number of new rules. So what NIS does is all companies that are in scope in a number of sectors which are listed in the annex, they have to have cybersecurity, comply with cybersecurity measures, which are now listed in the directive. So there is a list of 10 high-level measures, which are all based on a risk-based approach. So it's up to the company to assess its risks and applies these measures depending on the risk it faces. And these measures include incident handling. So they're measures which are usually applied. They're part, for example, based on ISO standards or on available practices in the member states. So it's nothing revolutionary, but it's just pulling them together and harmonizing this across the whole EU. So incident handling, business continuity, supply chain security is very high on the agenda. So there is a huge focus on supply chain security. What is also new and very important is the accountability for top management for non-compliance. So we're bringing cybersecurity to the boardroom, and this comes with the responsibility of the top management for the risk management measures. They're personally they would be responsible to approve these measures. And then the entities would have to notify significant incidents in different stages. And these rules are also harmonized across you in what stages. So it's 24 hours early warning from becoming aware of an incident, just sending first information, then 72 hours from becoming aware, first notification, so first incident report, and then a final report within 1 month. So we have these harmonized new rules. You can go on the next slide, which shows the what are the sectors. So what is in black are the sectors that were covered under NIS1, and we saw this was not enough at the time. These were really the most critical sectors, but in view of the huge interconnectedness and links and digitalization of society, these 7 sectors which we're covering were not sufficient. So now this scope has been significantly expanded to cover more energy operators, types of operators, different health operators. In view, this was a response to the COVID crisis. Digital infrastructure covers also data centers, content delivery networks. Telecoms and trust service providers have been brought under the umbrella of NIS. They were previously regulated separately. So now we have one harmonized framework. public administration, it's very important because it's not only for the private sector, but also member states have to secure their public administration. Manufacturing, the process of manufacturing, so it's not about the products, it's about the process, etc. And then on the next slide you can see, because there was what I mentioned is the size, so we cover as a rule medium or larger entities with these exceptions. So in case of telecoms, trust service providers, TLD name registries, DNS service providers, there is no size, so all entities would be in scope and they'll have to provide these measures. On the next slide, just to say a few words for SMEs particularly. So I mentioned the size threshold, which is generally medium or larger. This is exactly to ensure certain proportionality and criticality. It's often not the best proxy, the size, but it is an indication of criticality for the society and economy. But of course, member states can also, if a certain provider is very critical for a certain region, for certain services, if it's a sole provider, then they could also be part of the scope. So that a company is small does not mean that it would not be part of the scope. And then I mentioned also the proportionality, which is crucial. We have the risk-based approach, and then the supervision and enforcement, which for most of the medium-sized companies and smaller companies, the supervision and enforcement would be based on the so-called ex ante. So only if there is an indication that something went wrong, member states would go and check. Ex post, ex ante would be the supervision, so including documentation and regular audits, only for as a rule, only for the larger companies, which are so-called essential companies. And then in terms of SMEs, we have the provision that member states have to include them in their national strategies and provide opportunities on a national level to help and assist SMEs in advancing their cybersecurity. And since I mentioned supply chain and the importance of supply chain, basically companies have to secure their supply chain, and at least their first-tier suppliers, they will have to go and make due diligence, make sure that they also apply these cybersecurity requirements. To facilitate this, this will be helped by the so-called Cyber Resilience Act, which is, you can move to the next slide. It is the proposal made last September, and it's currently in co-decision, in negotiations, in the last stage in trilogue. So the Council have come to a joint common position, the Parliament has come to its joint common position, and now the co-legislators have been discussing this. There is a huge interest to move this quickly forward until the European elections. So we're hopeful and we trust that this will happen by the end of the year, or at the latest until the spring.
Yeah, for two reasons. For two reasons, that hopefully we have the support to do it before the elections, and also to fight any kind of disinformation during those elections, right?
This exactly, that's true. So, and the Cyber Resilience Act is going to help the supply chain security to comply. So, for companies to comply with the supply chain security requirement, because what it does is it requires products that are placed on the European market to take cybersecurity into account. So, to comply already from the design and development stage with cybersecurity essential requirements. And by products, I mean it's called products with digital elements, and this would cover all hardware, but also software, so self-standing software. And the requirements are based very much inspired, and to a great extent based on the new legislative framework, which is very well known, well established, the EU product-related legislation, NLF. So it follows the logic of NLF, with the exception that now we cover software, and the obligations would be not only at the moment of placement of the market, but because of the nature of products with digital elements, and especially of software, also throughout their life cycle. So it's not only the moment of placement, but In case of software, this software would need to be updated and patches need to be sent. So there should be no vulnerability, no known vulnerabilities when the product is placed on the market. And then whenever a vulnerability appears, they should be patched. We limit this to 5 years, but this is subject now to negotiations, whether this is enough or this has to be adapted. So 5 years or shorter if the life cycle of product is shorter than 5 years, of course. And then it comes with, as I said, the obligations for manufacturers, distributors, importance. The requirements are high level, technology neutral, and risk-based. So there is certain proportionality. It's up to the manufacturer to make a risk assessment and see which of the requirements, which are also, as I said, high level, would apply to the particular product. And then, of course, to be able to facilitate compliance, standards will be developed. And already now, because this takes so long, already now the standard development process, or let's say the mapping and discussion of what standards would be needed has been launched. So we're in contact with the European standardization organizations to move this forward so that we can preempt this process and not only wait for the moment of entry into force to start it. Yes.
But Boriana, we have to wrap that up if you can
I'm
fairly
almost
quickly,
ready.
because we're way behind time. Yeah, this is all really important, but yeah, please.
So then the most critical is the conformity assessment, that they will be differentiated by level of risk. The majority of products will be based on self-assessment, and then certain more critical products will have to undergo third-party assessment or application of standards, so depending on the risk. And then market surveillance enforcement is as known by the NLF, the usual. And then once a product is has been undergone this process, it will carry the CE marking. So in the future, the CE marking will stand also for cybersecurity, ensuring cybersecurity has been taken into account. So on the next slide, and then I wrap it up quickly, we understand that this will be very important for SMEs, because 99% of the stakeholders for the CRA are SMEs. In the public consultation and in the impact assessment, we were proactively targeting, because it's not always very easy to get the feedback from SMEs. So we have been targeting proactively. The impact or the feedback was positive, as long as there is a horizontal approach and it creates a level playing field, and as long as this is risk-based and proportionate. So SMEs will benefit from it as manufacturers, because there will be a level playing field in terms of, the CE marking in the future would mean that you have complied with this and your products are secure. But also as users of cybersecurity products, this will simplify SMEs' lives, as I said, because they are very much vulnerable as well for the future. And then the last slide is how we can support, and this I think you know very well, via Horizon Europe, Digital Europe program, digital innovation hubs, and the security coordination, cybersecurity coordination centers. So there are different options, and the Commission can also help with guidelines and templates. And this is also one of the issues that the co-legislators are discussing now, how to support SMEs, because everyone is aware how crucial this is, because we want to have stronger cybersecurity, but we want to also protect our industry. So this is it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Boriana, thank you so much. And everyone look in the chat too, because there's a lot more information there. In fact, Filippo Bozzi, who's going to be speaking with us on the panel, has more information on operational resiliency, what he's been up to. But before we get to Filippo and company, let's go to you and get your input on Slido. So you can see there, you can either use the QR code or go to slido.com, #cyber-security. And let's go to the first question. We want to tap your brains and get, well, how worried are you? How much have you been attacked? So let's go first on how big is cybersecurity a priority for you? Is it major somewhat or not at all? And Boriana, stay on. Maybe you might have a comment there or two. Obviously, pretty major. And that seems to make sense after the fact that we had requests to actually do this cluster talk on cybersecurity. So people are concerned. And, individuals, governments, and companies, large and small. And it's a cost as well. We're going to be talking about that as well, that it is an increasing cost factor in dealing with cybersecurity. Let's go to the next question. How many times have you or your company been cyber attacked in the past year? Now, I'm curious about that. All right. At least a few times. All right. And that is enough to be worried to want to take action on that. There are different levels of seriousness, of course, but there's hacking bank accounts, impersonating. There's all kinds of different kinds, and we won't go into that. That'll take too much time. Let's go to the next question. Do you have adequate resources and skills to tackle a cyber attack? You have enough? You have some or none? So, okay, well, that's interesting. Some haven't any. And I don't know, Boriana, are you surprised by that?
Well, it's still changing.
Yeah, it's evolving, of course. Yeah. But there's still some who haven't taken any, who don't have any resources and skills for that.
Yeah, well, this is dangerous. I'm not surprised because this more or less corresponds to what we found in our impact assessments.
Really? Okay.
And this is why we have dedicated a special chapter on SMEs and in it because they seem to be really the most vulnerable, because often until now they do not invest that much in cybersecurity as much as is necessary. And what I started with, the 57% say that it can be really vital for their survival.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
indeed. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Let's drill down deeper and let's go to our panel. It begins with Filippo Bozzi, CEO of Imola Informatica, your Vice President of Cluster Innovate as well. That includes Imola and 4 Italian universities and other companies I saw online. And Imola is does financial services for companies with digital transformation, help from banking malware, blockchain projects, mortgage insurance. And you, Filippo, you mentioned in the chat about how you're working on operational resiliency. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Morning,
Yeah.
everybody. It's key. It's key because we all rely on digital services and shared infrastructure. So it happens if we get attacked, we have to find before being attacked the way to survive the attacks. It's key you setting up a framework. We have seen that in the previous slides. And the framework is very high quality. We have been working my company is working on financial services advisory since 25 or 27 years. And we work together with very large enterprises in Italy, as you said, on banking and insurance. And we found out that as you develop new digital services, you become very vulnerable to attacks. So you have to work on
and you have to try to stay one step ahead. How do you do that with as things are going leaps and bounds, including with artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, we're working nowadays. We're starting working on that to support some critical security processes for banks, giving active defense to, for instance, to prevent frauds and money laundering. But if you are an SME, then you rely on digital services as well. So you have to start protecting yourself, and the key is having some sort of disaster recovery. It's basic, but usually SMEs forget to take backups and be able to recover from an attack by restoring the data. That's the most important and vital thing for every enterprise. And EU is giving us advices and will force us to think about that.
Now,
So
Cluster Innovate, can you tell us about that? How that is? I mean, you're putting your heads together between academia, companies. How is that working to help SMEs?
for SMEs, it's all about awareness and the ability to have some labs to practice on defense and attacks. So, for instance, we have a working group on cybersecurity. It's working on a product that's called Cyber Range. It's a virtualized environment for SMEs where you can practice on defense and attack. It's been built in 33 months of research and work by 3 universities, 1 innovation lab, and 5 companies belonging to my cluster.
And what's a typical kind of attack that you sort of war game against?
Well, usually you work on securing your infrastructure, but on my experience, the most important thing is to give awareness to your employees, because usually by social engineering, the attackers gain access to your system by exploiting people. So by sending an email that's asking that your CEO wants some passwords, because I'm target of common attacks. So usually people in my company are asked to give me some monies and recharge some prepaid cards or send me some instant banking.
It's too good to be true, man.
Yeah. So the human factor is the most important. So I don't know if CyberRange is working even on that, because usually when you virtualize environments, you don't virtualize people.
Yeah, the humans are fallible. It's a human factor. Let me. I want to go back to you, but let me move on to Miroslav Luchinsky, CEO, Critical Security for the past 16 years, if I'm not mistaken, including I saw on your website you got a free vulnerability scan of your website, of my website. That's quite interesting. And you do red teaming services at kind of a testing that involves simulation of a real world cyber attack. You're also a member of the BCCS cluster. That's a cybersecurity compliance cluster. Well, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think yeah, my background is based around let's say we do some things that real attackers do to test our clusters members, for example, organizations or just regular customers and so on. So this is in a way that also, I mean, the idea is that, when we talk about small and medium enterprises, sometimes everybody thinks that, only the large organizations have cyber threats that are relevant to them, like banks, insurance companies, financials. But actually, now we start to understand that, the idea is that the risks pretty much are for each organization, no matter what. So the data, because most of the organizations nowadays are relying on some sort of data. It could be their sales data, it could be their customer data, and so on. So it's important to also for the small organizations to understand for the first step what kind of data you have, where it is actually like stored, and how it's, because not all organizations even can describe their own like infrastructure, because they think maybe we have it in the cloud, maybe we have it in some local provider, then so it's also, as Filippo mentioned, it's also important to do security awareness for the staff, on different levels, because users have one type of potential risks, then for example IT staff is another layer, and so on. So
okay, so give us an example of a cyber attack that you help SMEs to fight back on.
Usually, the typical case is that you come to the office on Monday morning, and you get a couple of calls from the customers who had their data encrypted with ransomware, for example. Yeah, and sometimes, and then that's why I sometimes don't like Mondays, because those attacks are usually happening over a weekend when nobody is present in the office, nobody is there to actually notice the attack. And then attackers have time to navigate what kind of data is there in the organization. And if for example the backups are not done properly, sometimes it's not done properly because it's not separated from the general IT infrastructure, and then also the backups get encrypted, and then the enterprise, the small medium enterprises face the question, what to do, and there is no good solution for that. I mean, it's, to solve this incident, but
yeah. So what's this red teaming thing? This red teaming approach that you do?
Red teaming is basically when we are hired to simulate a real world attacker. Yeah, so there is some kind of organization which wants to test its cybersecurity level, so to speak. Yeah, and we red teamer would use an approach which is similar to what real world attackers are using to actually test the defenses.
Right. But then what you're saying is that that has to be done with assistance from a company like yours, or can an SME put together a red team of their own to deal with that?
I mean, yes, they can, but on the other hand side, it requires a lot of specific knowledge, and some people might have some of the knowledge, yeah, but not
all of it.
Usually not in a systematic way. And
then what about the BCCS cluster that you work with? Is that something that an SME can go to if they're in trouble?
Yes, exactly. We have assembled, different companies in one cluster to actually help, because a single company, we come from Lithuania, and Lithuania is a small country, so single company doesn't have all the required competences to deal with all the possible risks. Yeah, and that's why we have some technological security companies, we have lawyers, we have who deal with compliance part. Then we have other software developers who can help build you more secure software, and so on. So this is the idea.
Okay, and for all of you watching, listening, put in your questions there in the Q&A if you can. It would be great to get your questions after we go make a couple of rounds with the speakers. Let me go to Stelian Brad, professor in intelligent robotics and innovation engineering. You're president of the Cluj IT cluster. That's a leading work group on cybersecurity, and a professor at Tech University of Cluj-Napoca. You got a black belt in karate. I think that. So how do you put a black belt on an SME to deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, a black belt is a good approach, like in Six Sigma, to increase the capacity of people to deal with cybersecurity. Why not? That could be a good training program for different layers of capabilities and capacity building in the organization.
Yeah. How to become a Terminator against those cyber attacks? How do you do that?
With the Terminators, yeah. I think we need to have cybersecurity defenders in SMEs. So actually, it's one of our experience where we have started to prepare this training program for SMEs, including micro enterprises, which is a very important aspect because micro enterprises represent a big portion of the businesses in European Union, and It was successful, not an easy job, but definitely people were very happy with the results and with the certifications. It is also important because we have talked a lot about the technology and these threats. I'd like to highlight now why it's so important even for micro enterprises. We passed into a new era of these cyber attacks, which we call cyber crime as a service. And for very low prices, you can access services on cyber attacks. So anybody, imagine a person who is maybe upset on the manager or having fired for some reason. So it can be a breach in the system of that company. So nobody can be protected anymore because of the innovation in the dark side of the
That's very interesting.
cyberspace. Yeah.
Don't get mad, get even. Yeah, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So you through this this Kluge IT cluster, this working group you have on cybersecurity, you deal with blockchain, artificial intelligence, social media, fraud, and supporting for micro enterprises. What have do you have any, can you talk about the findings, what you found out, what the vulnerabilities are and how we address them?
We would like to say that beyond technology, and this is, I think, important for SMEs as well as for the clusters, and not talking necessarily about the IT clusters, because we have to face with any kind of portfolio of classes in Europe. It's a problem of cybersecurity policy. So as to the level of processes in organizations, we strongly recommend to have implemented these cybersecurity policies. It's about a group of 30 kind of policies that companies must implement in order to increase the security level, because not even the best technology in the world can be 100% safe for companies to protect. And we have made very interesting experiments in this respect. For example, during some training program with SMEs, we started at the beginning of the training, which lasts for 5 hours, to design viruses. And we invited antivirus companies to say if they are capable to detect this virus at the first attacks, and they said no. Maybe somebody in the network will be will have a problems, and after that we can act reactively. But this is the danger. So sometimes it's quite difficult, even if you think that you have an antivirus, that you are secure. You are not secure. Somebody in the network will be affected if a new virus will be sent in the network.
Okay. Okay. One other question to you is, how do you get clusters active? How do you stimulate that?
Yeah, the first thing to stimulate this is to have training, but not any kind of training, experiential training. This is very important, because people should, it's a saying here, in order to prepare for peace, you have to prepare for war in advance. So we have to train them to be aware about this, and to feel that is something behind they cannot see, but in fact the rest of demonstrations are the strongest, let's say, type of exercises they become aware. I mean, the companies, because sometimes they feel it's far away from us, we cannot see why to invest in this. But now, because more and more SMEs go towards digital transformation, a lot of their businesses run in the cyberspace, so therefore they have to take care a lot about this data. Also, we aware them about the GDPR, because they have a huge responsibilities with the breach of data, especially of their customers or people they are interacting with, organizations, in terms of GDPR. So they are subject also to additional penalties, besides ransomware or other kind of consequences if they suffer of this kind of attacks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a data protection regulation. Okay, let's move to Teofilo Redondo, Manager of Technology and Innovation at Vida Idea, that company that works against malware, fraud, data leaks. You're calling us from Leon because there's a conference over there. You're a member of AEI Ciberseguridad. That's a Spanish cybersecurity innovation cluster. And you bring together companies, research centers, universities, public and private organizations. How are you tackling, and what are you hearing there on the ground at that conference? How are you tackling cybersecurity?
Well, as somebody has already mentioned, there's a lot of angles in this story, and just building on what my colleagues has been presenting and commenting, awareness is one of the topics that is coming at the first time. This is something that, from the consulting perspective, we already do. So this is something that we manage for SMEs and also for big companies. Because of the interrelationship, big companies are using SMEs to cover some of the services. So all the chain, all the supply chain needs to be covered. And one of the things that we are managing of this awareness is presenting all the news about the new legislation, all the new acts, and all NIS 2 is all the rage right now, because everybody wants to be aware and everybody wants to be prepared for anything that comes into that place. And building on what Stelian just mentioned, because of the fines that people are exposed, the companies are exposed to, they are paying more attention, even more than when they have been attacked, and they have solved that, just to be more on the preventing side of things. This is what we are detecting, especially from the cybersecurity cluster in Spain, and also building on that with some similar clusters in other countries.
Yeah, and this conference that you're at, are you talking about that, about cybersecurity?
Yeah, several topics during today and tomorrow, and several things about skills framework and from any side. This is also part of the comments. Yeah, the skills is all the rage.
Yeah,
I believe
skills important.
Boriana mentioned that.
Yes,
absolutely. But not only for the professionals, but also for the suppliers and the buyers. That's also part of the overall knowledge that they have to manage.
And what about where AI fits in? How much are people worried about how that's advancing so fast that you can very easily impersonate anybody?
Yeah. Well, this is the one of my favorite topics, and this is something that nobody, I believe, is prepared to manage that. It's not only the fakes, visual things, but also textual things. Filippo mentioned that we are all subject to be impersonated and just managing some bills that do not correspond. And Miro presented also that part before. Mondays is really the reconning day, which is just taking action on the things happening during the weekend. And this is something that we are right now. This is how you manage to fight these deepfakes, not only with the visual part, but also the textual part, just building up mails, fake mails, pretending to be someone else, and then trying to manage that. We have several customers that have received this kind of mails, and they have a full protocol to proceed with that. As soon as they have a certain amount of money being requested to be compensated for some service, there's a whole thing, a whole chain of actions that need to protect. And so far, only one in our list of customers have managed to be to recover the money that they paid unintentionally to one of these attackers.
You talked about text. You did a paper in 2016 called Text Analytics, the Convergence of Big Data and Artificial Intelligence. Did you see all this coming back then, 7 years ago?
I hate to say that.
As I told you so.
I told you so. Yeah, exactly. At that time, we were just guessing that this could happen on the wrong side of things. And unfortunately, some of the things that we presented there, it's something that is happening in several areas. Also, national security, but also some of the big industries, pharma, banking, and all that. This is already happening, and with tools that are all the rage right now, like all the large language models. ChatGPT is just one of those. But you have Falcon, you have all the Llama family of lines. Yeah. This is something that even if there's some companies pretending to defend you against this kind of made up messages, I still have some doubts about that. Yeah. So I'm sorry that I was so right about the future 7 years ago.
Yeah, well, and therein lies that importance for the awareness.
Yes, and exactly.
Can I go back to Miroslav and all of you watching and listening? Please send in your questions. Any questions you have are fair questions. We also want to get your feedback too. What we heard from Boriana, what your EU is doing, what measures the EU is taking, and if maybe other measures could be taken. Miroslav, maybe get your feedback on that, and also the question of, this costs money. What are the financial constraints typically of an SME? Can they afford this?
Well, financial question, of course, is always important. Yeah, and the most important, I think, is actually balancing what is your spending, where to put the focus. Often, from my experience, I see that sometimes, the organizations have accumulated some kind of we call it technological debt. So there is also like a cybersecurity debt that they should have started doing something about cybersecurity 10 years ago, but no money, no budget, no time. Yeah, and now everything is like building up, and there are lots of different fields to address. So and then the organizations decide that we need to address it, and then they want to address everything at once. And everything at once, it sounds good for as a project, but on the other hand side, it's also expensive. Yeah, so there is always a need to prioritize what you need to do, to create some kind of a plan, maybe multiple year plan to start with something, and then move on from there, because on your path to success, you will learn new things that you haven't known about it beforehand.
Yeah, and then also let me shift over to Filippo, because I see you typing feverishly in the chat there, all kinds of really good information, including about SMEs. If they can't do it alone, they can do it together in a cluster, can't they? It's cheaper.
And I have some other thoughts about a basic set of tools that does not force you to spend lots of money just to begin. Just to give you an idea, I was writing another note. I just sent it.
A lot of good information in there.
Knowledge is important as well. And maybe a set of basic tools. I mean, a password manager should be free because you have to keep your secrets secret. And so, for instance, we have an alongside company that offers 100% open source and free password manager. That was built with the aim of giving everybody the ability to start without fees, because apart from rules or regulations, you need some basic tools for free. I'm convinced about that.
Yeah. Okay. And then how does that work through a cluster? How can they save money that way?
Yeah, you have to spread knowledge about the tools or the things you should start. You should start from. I mean, it's a risk-based approach. You cannot get 100% security, so you have to maybe share the set of things that are most useful for the least expense for SMEs. For instance, if you don't manage properly your passwords, then you can buy everything, but you're open. I mean, your firewall password, if it's the same password you use for everyday work, and it leaks in a data leak, then you're open, even if you have spent lots of money in lots of hardware or software for protecting your network.
Right. Stelian, do you have anything to add on that as far as the role of clusters in helping SMEs?
Yeah, definitely. One important aspect that cluster can help SMEs is for the shared infrastructure for cybersecurity. And I'm talking here about, I say, complex infrastructure. This is one issue, and we have encouraged. Even today in the morning, I had an information from one of our company that has been attacked with ransomware. It's a company that also is responsible for delivering electronic signatures, so it was quite a delicate issue, but because we encourage these companies to use appropriate infrastructure, that's one of the strengths. Of course, doing training in the cluster, they can share the cost, and this is another advantage. And of course, on the other side, there are many applications that are not necessarily expensive, but companies are not aware about their existence. So we organize different events, workshops, especially where we introduce these kind of tools. So for example,
Workshops, that's good.
Workshops where we introduce, for example, how to test your vulnerability of devices. So they have maybe for 100 euro per year, the possibility to have a continuous assessment of their devices. Many other simple practices. It's not a big deal also for a password manager. But beyond all these things, we consider that employees are very important to be educated because they act in different contexts. And what we encourage also companies to consider, this is not yet implemented, but we are working on this, on a trusted decentralized network to support cybersecurity.
Right. Teofilo, I saw you nodding. Does AEI Cyberseguridad, your innovation cluster, do you also do workshops? Is that a way to get more active as a cluster?
Yeah, taking some of the lessons learned with big companies and where they have a different kind of dynamics in this respect, and moving this to the SMEs that belong in the cluster. So we are pushing for more awareness and the new tools, as I believe Miroslav mentioned, and Filippo as well. Some of the free or open source tools that give you an interesting insight into some of the activities and some of the knowledge that you have to do. One of the things that we are proposing, and some of the companies that specialize within the cluster, they are specialized in education, in training and all that, is running some kind of emulating situations where you have to manage the situation. So how you respond, how you react.
Like a real life situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a complete simulation of the situation. So I would compare that to escape room type of activity. So you have to build on the knowledge, and you have to find some clues, and then this is giving you additional training capabilities. Learning by doing, and practicing all the different possible stages, which, as Filippo mentioned, there's no 100% security. So the more you approach to the 100, 99% would be recommended, but complete security is impossible.
I have to get to the Slido feedback, but before I do, from all of the speakers, what is there anything you want to say about what Boriana presented? Is there anything that is missing? Anything that could be added to what the EU is doing?
Yeah, may I say a few? Yes. Okay.
First, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to encourage more and more pushing the regulations towards these good practices for all companies, because we have seen some countries which are under pressure. I'm naming Israel, for example. They have a specialized program to educate all companies. They have a unit at the governmental level that provide this kind of ethical attack, informing the companies about their vulnerabilities. And on the other side, they encourage and facilitate the idea of cyber insurance. So if you like to have a cyber insurance, definitely you have to be prepared for being protected. And this is also part of the competitive advantage, because in a supply chain, you can claim that, yes, I'm certified, I have been tested, my infrastructure, in terms of business continuity plan and resilience, which is more and more important, this is an important aspect. So I would like to encourage also from top down different approaches to introduce these practices in SMEs.
Okay, good. Anybody else want to add to that before we go to the Slido? Anybody?
Yeah,
Teofilo?
I would like to add, because we have been focusing on, Oriana was focusing on cybersecurity and cyber resilience and DORA and all that.
Yeah.
But also something that which is really transversal, it affects everything, is the future AI, artificial intelligence regulations and act. Because as we mentioned before, this is something that will affect either from the red team perspective, from the blue team perspective, from the in the middle perspective, and several things. And from the last conferences that I was attending, and I was also participating, there's still some gap in understanding how this is going to affect in the near future. I'm not forecasting anything 7 years ahead.
Very hard. Yeah.
But this is something that should also be part of maybe some amendments, maybe some extensions to the current regulation. So I believe that should be also in there.
Okay, I think Miroslav, do you have anything to add, or Filippo, either of you, before I move on? You don't have to. It's only if you have something to add to the mix. You're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Okay, guys. All right, well, thank you so much. Big hand to you guys. Thank you so much to hear from the clusters and how people can get involved in that. And the workshops, I think, are really good. Awareness is really good. And of course, wargaming, of course, is very important, and that's what you all do. So that's really great. Let us find out from those watching, listening, all of you watching, listening, what your takeaway is from all this. That was a lot of good information from the commission, from the speakers, from those companies, from the clusters. What's your key takeaway? You can put it in 1, 2, 3 words. Whatever you think is important. Why was this useful for you? And maybe feedback on Boriana's presentation, as we heard that you know, it is really hard to stay a step ahead of these developments in cyber shenanigans, and how do you tackle that? It's very, very, very tricky. Passwords, yeah, securing the passwords. That was interesting about the weekends. Maybe it's important to have somebody riding shotgun on the stagecoach over the weekend, but if you don't, then you have to be ready for Mondays. Yes, be vigilant. It's awareness. Useful to open a cybersecurity working group in the cluster. Boriana, can I get your feedback on this? This is all very interesting. And the thing about the AI Act, I mean, that's a moving target. I'm talking to MEPs here in the Parliament repeatedly, and it's really tricky to stay a step ahead of that, isn't it? If you're still with us, Boriana, there you are.
I'm here.
Okay, yeah.
You mean on the AI? I would not like to comment very much on the AI because
Okay.
it's not in my portfolio, and
Fine.
I don't feel that yeah, empowered to do it. But
Okay.
on the other things, thanks a lot. It was a very interesting discussion, and I mean, my takeaway is always the first thing that I notice whenever I talk. It's not only what companies do, but I mean, it's also part of what companies do. It's all about awareness and training, because
Yeah.
it does really seem that it often, this is the weak link, the people who just let their credentials out there or click
Yeah.
on a link. So it's an easy thing to fix, often to train people and to test. We get it in the commission. I work in cybersecurity, and it happened to me that in an internal test I clicked on the wrong link, which was like a phishing testing link.
Yeah,
So
sure. Awareness,
we are
vigilance.
all very, yeah, we are all vulnerable to that. So
Yeah, yeah. And I like that one. So cybersecurity is crucial for the survival of SMEs. It's life and death for some of them. They've got to
yes.
deal with it, and how clusters can help with that. The legal developments, obviously, to keep in mind. Yeah, a lot of good takeaways.
Yeah,
I
and
think, yeah.
another message from us, it's please, because what I mentioned is it's not always easy to get in touch with SMEs or to get the feedback of SMEs. So please come and talk to us whenever you have good ideas or ways how we can work together. Please do come and talk to us.
You heard it here, all you SMEs. Okay, you know where to go. Great. Well, Boriana and all of the speakers, thank you so much. Miroslav, Stelian, Teofilo, and of course, Filippo. Thank you to all of you, and lots of good takeaways for all of us watching. Let us go to the funding opportunities, Nina, before we wrap this up.
Many things are interesting to listen to you. I also took note of some takeaways for us.
Yeah.
And to close, I just want to present quickly some funding opportunities for SME that are related to SMEs that we talked about today, and also to innovation, which also relates to digital and cybersecurity. We have, as you see on the screen, a call open from the Digital Europe program that was also mentioned by Boriana earlier during the presentation. Here it's called Supporting Competitiveness and Innovation Potential of SMEs. And the proposals are supposed to help identifying and attracting SMEs whose innovation potential and competitiveness can be increased by the uptake of advanced HPC, high performance computing services. And the call also foresees a mechanism to provide financial support to third parties through open calls, so cascade funding scheme, which also many clusters are implementing in their projects. The aim of this call is to enhance, of course, European competitiveness in the market by enabling SMEs to perform efficiently using HPC, to accelerate innovation, improve productivity and efficiency, and to enhance business opportunities and new markets. Deadline for this is the 7th of November. You see the topic ID on the screen and the link in the chat. The IT Manufacturing also has a call open for empowering SMEs, and they would like to support SMEs who would like to innovate their existing solutions to adapt and expand to new markets beyond the current applications, and they will receive financial support and other support services for their solutions and their activities. And they should address optimizing production processes and increase resource sufficiency through digital solutions, socially sustainable and human-centric manufacturing, or environmentally sustainable manufacturing through circular business models and new technologies. All is open until the 11th of December this year, and you have the link in the chat to click on it to see all the details. And of course, we have many calls open from the Euro clusters, the initiatives of clusters that give financial support to SMEs in many different ecosystems and for innovation activities, for the uptake of processes and technologies, for training, and also for internationalization. And there are a few new calls that have opened. You can check out all the different calls on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. For example, the first one is on artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies that you see here on the screen. But we also have opportunities in many different ecosystems, not digital, but also mobility, textile, manufacturing, water smart solutions, energy intensive industries, and the creative and cultural industries. Have a look at clustercollaboration.eu/open-source and see whether there are any opportunities for your SMEs. And if you're working on new projects or new project ideas that you would like to network for new partners, or you would like to give it a push and work extensively, have the Cluster Collaboration Labs, which will take place in Slovenia next week. The deadline to register is today, so if you still would like to come, you have a chance to register today, or in Vilnius, Lithuania in mid-November. It's an interactive workshop to meet, to network, to exchange ideas, and to work on new project proposals, maybe on one of the calls that you've seen, or if you have a project idea that you want to get new partners for, come and join us. And with that, I close, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Great, Nina. Thank you so much. Yeah, Ljubljana, I love that town. And the deadline is today, so be sure to register for that if you can make it. That's it for the clusters talks for now, but please do register for the next one. That is already next week. Industrial alliances, much more to come. Make sure to register for the cluster collaboration platform, and keep in mind the social media at clusters_EU. And hashtag EU Clusters Talks if you heard anything great from today. See you next time. My name is Chris Burns. Great to be with you. See you next time.